Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, cool. I'm Vincent. My talk is titled, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I'm Still Hacking Your Small Business. My talk is rated M for mature because at some point I'm going to use some profanity. I'm sorry. It's just how I am. Some things I'm going to show you today would be considered criminal activities should you not have the permission from your target. FYI. Who am I? I'm a penetration tester. I'm a small business owner, and I'm an Air Force veteran. The things that are important to know about me are that I've been in tech for over 30 years. I've run a technology business for the last 20 years. It started off as a break-fix IT company. We were a concierge type business where we had a small number of clients and they were high revenue. And then about 10 years ago, cloud started eating into our business model. And our business just didn't scale that way because, we're once six-figure clients. We're now low five-figure clients. So I decided to pivot the business, thought security would be a good play. Seems like it wasn't a bad choice. And I took the OSCP course. Do you know what that is? And I fell in love with offense, and I've been doing offensive security ever since. So what's this talk about? So I work with small businesses. So think 1,000 employees or less. With big businesses, say like a Bank of America. Bank of America has a security team. They have, a SOC. They have layers and layers of security, and they have big bags of money to throw at the problem. Small businesses, on the other hand, are the low-hanging fruit. And this talk is about my adventures while working with those small businesses. So we are going to attack a small business like a malicious actor. And our target is going to be 100 to 250 employees in size. This is a sweet spot for me personally because they're big enough that they have stuff, but they're small enough that they're still very immature. So when we look in their environments, they're not running EDR, they don't have a SOC, they're not using SOC as a service, they're running traditional AV, and most times we find that they're running flat networks, so no segmentation. So maybe somebody else in this room has thought about how they would hide their identity if they were going to be an attacker. My wish list consists of burner laptops. I'm going to work out of a mom and pop coffee shop because I feel like Starbucks is logging the traffic. They've got cameras. I don't know what the retention is on that. I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to work out of the mom and pop coffee shop. I'm going to use a privacy VPN. I'm going to use Tor and Tails, and I'm going to have a VPS or two, virtual private server. Some of you may recognize this. It's the logo for Kali Linux. I saw a little smile there. Can't be a hacker unless you use Kali. Truth be told, I actually don't use Kali. I use Ubuntu. I put a small set of tools on it that I use. I find that Kali is big and bloated, and it tends to break in the middle of engagements. But in the context of this talk, I'm going to use Kali because every script kiddie in the world uses it. And if my operating system gets fingerprinted, I'm going to look like everybody else. I'm going to use Molvad for my privacy VPN because they take cash. And I thought that was hilarious. They say, send us cash, but not too much. But they don't specify how much is too much. So I threw $20 in an envelope, mailed it to Sweden, and I was expecting that to be beer money. But in about a week, it actually lit up. I was really surprised. I'm going to get a little granular because I want you to see how simple it is to get this platform set up. So I'm going to install Tor. I'm going to make a modification to proxy chains. And then I'm going to curl my IP address before and after. And what we see is that we have one IP address. And then when we go through Tor, we have another. FYI, those are not my IP addresses because this is a security conference. I don't trust you people. Going to install the Molvad client. Going to fire it up. Going to connect. So we're connected to Sweden. Again, going to check my IP address before and after. And again, what we see is that we have two different IP addresses. So now I have several routes to go to the internet and I can masquerade my IP. So the question is, are we safe? Is this good OPSEC? From a small business? Sure. From three-letter agencies or a nation state? No. But this is good enough for what we're going to do. Oh, that was I don't know. Sorry. So now we're going to go hunting. And you might be thinking, well, what are we hunting for? I need a VPS. And I was thinking that I would get some crypto and I would go to some shady provider and I would get a VPS from them. But then I had this idea of firing up a honeypot. Now I've got a bunch of ports that are open on this. And the first thing that I noticed was that there was a ton of SMB traffic coming inbound, and it was just overwhelming. I mean, it was crazy. Like I had RDP open and that would get hit here and there. And, obviously HTTP and HTTPS, but SMB traffic was just flowing and flowing and flowing. So after 10 minutes, I just cut it. I parsed the logs. I sorted for unique IPs, and I had 62 of them. Now, my thinking here is that these are bot compromised servers. So they had vulnerabilities, and those bots took them over. So I'm thinking, I've heard of bots actually patching, but I can't imagine that's all of them. So I think I can find a vulnerability, I can compromise that, and then I can take a position. So I scan and I find that there are a bunch of ports open. And so I'm liking my odds at this point. So as I dig in, I do a reverse lookup, and I see that I've got a bunch of IPs that are actually out of country. Now, I don't know, but in my head, I'm thinking if I stay out of the United States, I'm probably better off. That just adds another layer. As I dig into that further, I find 4 Russian IPs. IT Army of Ukraine and Anonymous are hacking the shit out of Russia. So I feel like these are good targets for me because I can blend into that noise and I can take a position and again, further, hiding my identity. So hack the planet, right? Would like to remind you that that would be considered a criminal activity. So we're going to pretend. Let's say on one of those Russian IPs, I find a vulnerable WordPress site. Now, I have a number of plugins that I use to do various things on WordPress. Let me step back for a second. If you don't know what a plugin is, you go to a website, it's got this pretty picture and that scrolls, and there's another picture that takes its place. That's a plugin. It adds functionality to the core product. And so I've got one, it's called WordPress Backdoor. That seems kind of suspicious. So we're going to call it WordPress CSS Updater. And basically all a plugin is some comment lines that WordPress will recognize it is being a plugin, and then some PHP. The bottom line is remote code execution. So we zip it up, we log in, we point to the plugin, and then we activate the plugin. And there it is. Our plugin is sitting in there. Now, I've managed content management systems before, and never have I gone in and scrutinized those plugins. They just exist in their own little place. Now, as an attacker, though, I'm looking at this and I see that 2 are in need of updating. I don't want anybody to be drawn to that. Like if an admin comes in and sees that, they're going to go look in there. I don't want them to see that because then they're going to come in and maybe see mine. So I'm actually going to patch that as an attacker. I'm going to do a good deed. At the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish is this. We point to the plugin, we give it the command of ID, and then what we get back is dub data. So right now I've got remote code execution, and I've got myself a Russian C2 server. So the next topic I want to talk about is phishing. So back in the day, when I first started running phishing campaigns, I would take one email and I would blast it out to all the users at the same time. And then I would gather the metrics and I would weigh out like how good our training was doing. The problem with that is people were like sneaking over the wall and they're like, hey, watch out for that fake phishing email. And so I felt like that wasn't a very effective way. So what we do today is we take our users and we break them up into groups. So we have the marketing department, the sales department, finance. And then what we do is we find fish that match those groups. And so like the fake FedEx email is going to go to the shipping guy. And then because we're working with small business, what happens is we very rarely see that 2 users get fished in the same day, and rarely are 2 users seeing the same fish. Now, I want to show you some fish that hooked people. I want to talk about variables because you're going to see %date, %time, %email. These get populated at the time they get sent out. So upper right-hand corner, you see %date. That would just show today's date. So this was one that went out. It's not great. It says you ordered a $1,700 laptop and the user's like, oh shit, I did not order that. I'm going to click on all these links. So that was something to fish somebody. Here's another one, fake voicemail to email. This is actually really successful in a client that actually has voicemail to email. The problem with them is that their VoIP system puts their name and the company's name and the VoIP system name in here. And this has none of that, and people keep clicking on it. At the bottom of the barrel, we have this piece of crap. It says, we've received your order. It'll be processed soon. You can view your order by clicking here. And it's got a link. It says, thank you, customer service department. It doesn't have their name, doesn't have the company's name, doesn't have anything. And people click on this. I swear, it's crazy. So at the end of the quarter, I run the metrics. And what we see is that we had 10 users clicking links. We had 2 reported. when I run these campaigns, I try to emphasize reporting. To me, that seems equally valuable as recognizing something and not clicking on the link. And the reason being is if a fish comes into your environment and you report it, I can purge that from the mail system and I can stop other people from clicking on that link. This client doesn't care though. And so this is the guy that I report to for this specifically. And he says, we're doing our annual PCI security training. Hopefully they'll pay more attention this year. So funny thing is, I went back in my email. I have an email from him last year. It literally said the same thing. And these guys are at 20% click rate, which is higher than the average. They suck. All right. I want to talk about spearfishing. Who thinks they can't be fished? Anybody? I know it says you put your hands down. So I assume there are people in the room that are looking to get their first job in security, or they're looking to get a better paying job. So I'm going to prop up a website, Phoenix Recruiters. It says, whether you need remote or on-site staff, we understand the unique challenges of the Phoenix metro area job market. And you're like, Vincent, I'm in San Antonio. You're right. We understand the unique challenges of the San Antonio job market. I buy domains for $12. I got this template off of W3 Schools. I spent maybe 5-10 minutes building this thing. And that's the beginning of what I'm about to do. So then I'm going to fire off an email and it says, hi, John, I am Vincent Smith and I work as a senior placement specialist at Phoenix Recruiters or San Antonio. I saw your profile on LinkedIn and I was really impressed by your experience in computery things because computery things are in high demand right now. Here at Phoenix Recruiters, we always look to collaborate with talented people, blah, blah, blah. Sincerely, Vincent Smith. Got a nice little signature block, generated that a logo on Adobe's website. It was free, took me about 5 minutes. There are no links or no documents in here. I'm going to go around and around establishing a relationship with you. I'm going to offer you $500,000 a year because it's not my money and I don't care. And then eventually I'm going to get to the point where I say, my client would like to take this to the next level. They need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'm going to send you a link or a document and I'm going to get you to do something you don't want to do. So bottom line is we can all be fished. Me too. All right. That was a little heavy. I want to transition. Meet Jade. Jade's got her CV posted up on this website. She's currently working as a bilingual customer service rep at Thermo Fisher Scientific. Prior to that, she was an engineering systems technical sales engineer at Johnson Controls. And prior to that, she was a technical sales engineer at Spirax. She's got an MBA from Pepperdine and a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Cal Poly. She's smart. She's got skills, Office 365, Salesforce, VisMe, Zoom. She speaks English and Spanish fluently, a little bit of German. She's on LinkedIn. Is she real or fake? She's fake. When a person does not exist, that is an AI-generated photo. Because I lack creativity, I went to the fake name generator and got her name, address, and phone number. Somebody was telling me, I was given this demo, I was demoing this talk for timing, and one of my buddies was like, well, I'd look at her profile on LinkedIn and see if she had connections. I'm like, dude, in a week, I was getting connections from Thermo Fisher Scientific and the Pepperdine MBA school. I'm like, she's going to look legit when I get done. So you might be wondering where I'm going with this, right? To what end? So I start my engagement and I'm on my client's website and I'm kind of scouring for things. At the bottom, I see this thing for employment. It's a PDF. It's looking for a technical position with a, that's a heavy engineering and sales. So I tailored Jade to meet this position. I went on the Wayback Internet and I saw that this had been sitting up there for a long time. So either this position churns or it's hard to fill. In either case, I'm liking where I'm going with this. At the bottom of their website, they give me an email address to email, info@companyname.com. Remember Jade? Jade's got an Outlook.com account. Turns out you can set up Outlook.com without a phone. In 2 weeks after setting up this account, it said, hey, we need a backup email or a phone. So I went to the disposable email site. I generated an email, gave that to Outlook. It gave me a 6-digit PIN. I gave it back, and then I'm golden forever. And you can do this over Tor, by the way. Remember Jade's CV site? I embedded a canary token. If you don't know what canary tokens are, they're these little web bugs that you can put in various things like documents and websites and AWS keys. And what happens is when somebody trips on this, it starts giving you information about the visitor. Click forward. There we go. So I send off an email to info@companyname.com. To whom it may concern, I found your job posting for technical customer service rep, and my qualifications are not an exact match, which is technically not true. They are. However, I'm attempting to secure employment in the Bay Area to be close to my family. I appreciate your consideration. Blah, blah, blah. Kind regards, Jade. In her signature block, I've got a link to the CV. I've also got a link to LinkedIn, which is just LinkedIn, but the CV's got the canary token. It's subtle. I don't know that they're going to click the link to the CV. Spoiler alert, they click the link to the CV. But if they had not, I would just go around and around, and then eventually I would send them a link to something, or I would send them a document. What we get is this. So after this document, or after this email went around and around, I get 5 hits, I get an incident list. And then when I dig into the incident, what I get is an IP address, and I get user agent information. So I'm starting an engagement blind in this environment. I don't know anything about this environment. I do know that Windows controls 70% of the operating system market, but I'm on the Mac. There's somebody in this room that's using Linux. What I'm trying to get is information essentially for free that I do not have going into this environment. The other thing that I get is this user in particular is using Firefox, might look up the version, see if there's a vulnerability, but it's just information that I can get for free without a little effort. So next topic, calling this MultiFunction Madness. This is Tank. Tank is real. He is a 70-pound pit bull, and he's my buddy. And Tank has the prey drive of, like, on a scale from 1 to 10, Tank is a 15. Tank is the kind of dog, when you open up the door, he surveys the perimeter. I live in Arizona. We back up to the desert. We got lots of desert creatures that roam in and out of our backyard. Tank's doing his thing. He gets along the back wall. There's this giant fucking lizard. There's my first F-bomb. Giant lizard on the wall. Tank gets along the back wall, sees the lizard, and the lizard sees Tank. The lizard starts running. Tank's in pursuit. The lizard doubles back. Tank follows. This goes back and forth a few times. The lizard falls off the wall, and Tank bites it in the center and swallows the thing whole. And it was the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen. It is that kind of drive. Oh, sorry, I forgot. So every day, this has been 2 years ago, every day since that day, I open up the back door and Tank makes a beeline to that spot on the wall. It's crazy. And it's like a lizard's going to appear for him, you know? And so it's that kind of drive that he has. This is how I am with your multifunction copiers. I love copiers. Because it's funny, like after an engagement, people are like, well, you know, hacker is going to make free copies. No, the shit has privileged access. It scans to file and it scans to email. So I'm on an engagement. I get into the copier. It's scanned to file. It's scanning into users' home directories, and those are restricted to the individual user. So instead of taking that user account and giving it access to those directories, they just made it domain admin. I took over the scanner account. I'm domain admin, game over. In another one with scan to file, I get in and I see that there are no credentials. So I think it's a mail relay. And the backstory is they were changing passwords every 30 days, and it was breaking the scan to email function every 30 days. So what they did was they decided they were going to whitelist an IP for mail relay, except instead of doing a one-to-one mapping from the scanner through the firewall, they just whitelisted the entire network. So I get in, I don't see credentials in there. I think mail relay, I'm inside the network. I send off an email and it goes through. So I started phishing everybody in the company off of the mail relay, and I was bypassing their security controls. So here I am on this engagement, and I find one of my favorite devices, a copier. Here's this Xerox VersaLink. So I go to Google and I say, Google, what is the default password? And Google says 1111. That seems safe. So I go to the login page, 1111, cross my fingers. Upper right-hand corner, I'm logged in as admin. So I get into the settings and it actually has credentials in there, but I get this idea. I'm going to put my attacking server IP address in as the mail server, and then I'm going to downgrade the port to 25. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's unencrypted. Now, if I were to make scanner software, I would make it so that if you made modification to the settings, it would blank out the password, but I have never found that to be the case. When I start an engagement, I fire up a tool called Responder. Responder is an LLMNR poisoner. It's basically used to do bad things for Microsoft. But in this case, I'm going to use it to catch credentials off this scanner, hopefully. So I've got the SMTP server set to my attacking server. I've downgraded the port 25 because it's unencrypted. And then I throw in a bogus email and I hit test. And back in Responder, I get cleared text credentials from that scanner. So when I get in your environment, I'm going to scan for all the copiers. And if we're counting them, I got 19. And I'm going to go through every single one of these. And I'm going to look and see if there's some credentials that I can abuse in there or steal or whatever. So that scanner account that we just captured, it actually wasn't domain admin, but what it gave me access to was HR and accounting. So for defining impact, HR is PII, finance is money, right? So in my pen test report, I say the penetration tester used tools and techniques to extract data from the network, simulating the actions of a malicious attacker. You got ransomware gangs. They get into your network. They encrypt your files, and then they say, pay us, or we're going to take your data and we're going to dump it on the internet. I basically just simulated that because they're exfiltrating your data, and that's what I can do. This next one I'm calling Evil Bookmark. I need to give you a little backstory on this. So in my scoping document, I ask, how is the penetration tester obtaining access to the network? So it might be over a VPN. If they don't manage the network and maybe they've got an IDS, I'll send them an Intel NUC, which is a little computer, and I'll ship it off to them and say, drop this in the middle of your network, plug it in, turn it on. It calls back to my attacking server, and then I tunnel back in and I do my thing. Another option is a jump box, and that's where this is going. So I get into the jump box, and to my surprise, the computer is inserted into the domain. And my domain or my account is a domain user account. And it maps drives for me. And I'm like, that is way, way too much access. That was not how that's supposed to go down, but I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna run with it. So I had this idea. So this is a bookmark, right? And what we got is this little picture, and we got this arrow that indicates shortcut. When we look at this at the file system level, really all it is a file name that ends in .url. When we look inside, it's this 4 lines of code, right? So it says internet shortcut. It's got the resource at google.com. And what generates that picture is the reference to icon file. So I'm pointing this to my attacking server. Now I drop this on this common share that I have access to. Thank you. And I want you to recall when we went to the desktop and you saw that TweetDeck icon, that little bird, we didn't have to do anything to get that to render. It's the act of opening to that location that causes it to look for the icon file. So just dropping this out there, when people open it up, it should start sending things back to my attacking server. So I've got responding server still fired up. It starts raining hashes. And I'm taking hashes and I'm throwing them into Hashcat and I'm cracking them. And then all of a sudden I get the administrator account. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I'm doing the postmortem on this with the client. And it turns out there was an administrator using the administrator account as his personal user account. I'm like, that is something you shouldn't be doing. All right, next we got tell me your secrets. So I start my engagement and I go to Hunter.io. And if you don't know what Hunter.io is, it'll tell you known email addresses for this domain name. The other thing that it'll tell you is the name format, right? So in the case of this client, which is a little small, it's first name dot last initial. So I take the 200 most common names and then I do a little bash magic. And basically what I'm doing is I'm taking that list and I'm appending .a through .z to the end of all of those, basically trying to match that format, right? So, Aaron A through O goes through Z, do that for every single name. Now I'm going to use a tool called Kerbroot. As an unauthenticated user, I can spray the domain controller with that list and it will tell me if those are valid usernames. So I'm starting to get hits. I parse that out and I dump it into a text file. That is one half of what I want. The other half is I want passwords. Now, there was a blog post a few years ago. It was a pen tester, and he was finding these commonalities in his engagements. In particular, people would call the help desk and they would need their password reset. And the help desk, trying to be helpful, and following password complexity rules, right? So need an upper, need lower, need number, need a special character. They were doing things like welcome one exclamation point, capital W. The other thing they were doing is the seasons. So spring, summer, fall, autumn, and then throw in the year on the end of it. So I took that, I'm lazy, I script everything. So I've got an array, welcome winter, spring, summer, fall, and I've got the years 2019 through 2022. Now, the reason why I'm going back into the past is what I've found is that sometimes an account will get shut down and then a manager will call up and say, I need that account opened up. And they'll open it up and they'll say, okay, yeah, we reset the password and it's summer 2021 exclamation point. So we have actually found accounts from previous years that just got left open. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go through their website. Do they make a product? Are they in an industry? Can I take those words, those words that might be used in a password? I'm going to grab stuff from their address. In this case, I'm going to grab Fremont. And then I'm going to make my list. So welcome one, Fremont one, and the seasons. Now I'm going to use a tool called Crack Map Exec. I'm going to call that CME moving forward because it's a tongue twister. And I can spray that list of users with welcome one. And what we see is status, log, and failure. So that is not a good password for any of those accounts that I have. I come back in with Fremont one and I get a hit, Jody.o. So I'm going to use a tool called Hydra. And Hydra is a brute forcing tool. Typically, you would give it a username and a bunch of passwords in a list, and you would spray a service. I actually know the username and the password. What I'm doing is I'm putting a bash for loop in front of this, and I'm spraying hosts 1 through 100, looking for open RDP with that username and password. After COVID, regular users have been given remote desktops. So this is something that we hunt for and we find. When I get to host 62, I get a hit. So the question is, now what? Bro, pop shells, Metasploit, right? I could, or I could use ConnectWise Control. If you don't know what ConnectWise Control is, he does. You call the help desk and you say, hey, I got a problem with my computer. My icons are upside down. And the help desk is like, hey, I'll come onto your computer and turn those right side up. They use a tool like ConnectWise Control to screen share with you. Turns out you can set up a ConnectWise Control account as any old person without a credit card. So I use Jade because why not? Now I'd like to point out that if you actually, I learned earlier that I could actually hop in with somebody on RDP, but prior to hearing that earlier today in a talk, I would typically not want to log in when a user is on their machine because it'll bounce them out and it's going to draw attention. So I typically want to work after hours. In the case of this client, I hopped in at 4 o'clock in the morning. I know it sucked, but that's when I did it. Saw ConnectWise Control. And Jody-PC shows up in my console. Bottom left-hand corner, trial will expire in 14 days. That's super convenient because my engagements usually last 2 weeks. I'm trying to get remote code execution, and that's what I'm doing here. I execute the command, who am I? It gives me back NT authority system. So I don't need Metasploit. I don't need to have to do evasion techniques or disable defender or whatever. I can just get this on the machine because it's a legitimate application. Like to point out that this dumpster fire was brought to you by local admin. If you give your users local admin, I'm going to wreck your shit. So I'm on the user's desktop. It's enumeration time. If you've ever played the CTF world, there's a offensive PowerShell called PowerSploit. I've never used that in the real world. I actually live off the land. I tend to just use Windows against itself and Active Directory the same. So because I'm local admin, I'm going to harp on that. I can install RSAT, Remote Server Admin Tools. So I get it installed and I start querying the environment. What I'm looking for is password never expires, password last set. So I find a few accounts that are set to true. So those are password never expires. The reason why I'm hunting these down is because I've actually been in the middle of an engagement where I get creds and then I lose them. So if I can take over these accounts, I know I'm good. Another thing that I'm gonna look for is service accounts, because typically they set them to never expire and they always throw them into the domain admins group. Now at the bottom, I see this comp ad and I don't know what that is. That's something weird. And I think in my head, I have to like imagine what this could be. And I think maybe they're using it to insert computers in the domain. I query domain admins and that account is in the domain admins group. So that would be an account that I would go after. That's a a lot of stuff that you can't see, but basically this is all the custom PowerShell that I've written that lives off the land. And I can do a whole talk on Active Directory another time, but basically, unless you're looking for like PowerShell execution, I can do all this stuff. I'm not getting detected. All right, I want to rewind. I'm on this system. I see Jody. We're Jody. We know this. But I also see a disconnected user account. Now, there is a tool called Mimicats that you could use to dump LSAS, but Mimicats has been neutered recently. But because I'm local admin, I don't need it. I can right click in Task Manager and I can create a dump file of LSAS. If you don't know what LSAS is, it contains clear text credentials and password hashes. So I dump it to a file and it says, hey, it's in this temp folder. And then moments later, Defender kicks in and says, whoa, that was a severe behavior. And I'm like, oh shit, it's going to delete that file. So I immediately jump into the folder and I zip a copy in place and then I drag a copy to the desktop. Moments after that, Defender deletes that file, but it leaves the zip file and it leaves the one on the desktop. So it's the act of dumping LSAS and not the presence of the file. So Defender, almost there, but not quite. And because I'm local admin, I disabled Defender because... So I dropped Mimicats on the box. I didn't have to. I could have pulled this over. And I pointed to my dump file. And the first thing that we see at the bottom is the administrator account and the password hash. So hold that thought, though. So then I get some clear text credentials. And then I'm looking at this clear text credential. And I'm like, I recognize that. That's Office 365. And this is an email account. I'm like, I'm going to log into OA, Outlook Web Access, webmail. So I go to OA. I give it my username and password. And then it throws up. And I'm like, well, that's weird. It accepted the credential, but it threw up. And I'm like, I don't know what this is, but it's base 64. So I'm going to decode it. So it says the mailbox being accessed doesn't have a valid account state, protocol disabled. Now, again, I have to conjure up in my head, like, what is going on here? I think that they didn't want to enable two-factor authentication. So what they did was they disabled Outlook Web Access. But you don't create a mailbox unless you want to give user access one way, shape, or form, right? So I'm thinking, well, I'm on Jody's system. I got Outlook. I fire up a new profile, configure it with info at, give it the password. And when I see this, I know I'm golden because you're all set. So I get into the user's mailbox. Now, it wasn't in scope to dig into this user's mail, but the thing that drew my attention was this down at the bottom. It says suppliers cybersecurity, and it's from Raytheon. Now, a few years back, the government was basically getting tired of being hacked through the supply chain. So they came up with some compliance things for their vendors. And they were saying, all right, your vendors need to go through some of this. I think DFARS is the bottom of this barrel. Now, the thing that's really amusing to me, having just finished the penetration test for this client, I know for a fact that they're not DFARS compliant. The other thing that's really amusing is that this is dated 2016. Like they are 6 years not compliant. All right. So I'm going to rewind back to that administrator account. I'm going in for the kill shot. I fire up CME. I point it to the domain controller. I give it the administrator account and that password hash. Bottom right hand, we see the command completed successfully. So that is a valid hash for that account. I double check domain admins and Jody.o is in the domain admins group. Did I skip a slide? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. And so Jody is in the domain admins group. So that's a fatality. So I've exfiltrated data. I've taken over the mail server. I've been in a user's mailbox and I've taken over the domain admin. So now let's talk about solutions. Burn it all down. Any defenders in the room? Anyone? I'm sorry. No, I got solutions. Gamify phishing. This is something users don't care, right? If their computer gets ransomware, they're like, not my computer, why do I care? Like, I only care about my home computer. So what we have found is that we have to get them engaged. So pre-COVID, what we would do is we would give out these little rubber or little glass fish bowls. And every time they completed a campaign successfully, we would give them rubber fish. We found that they started competing against each other to get more fish in their bowl. Post-COVID, we started using Starbucks gift cards. So remember, these are small businesses. So 100 employees, I'm doing my campaigns across the entire quarter. And we say, we're going to give you a $5 Starbucks gift card if you successfully complete this campaign. $500 a quarter, that's like pretzels and coffee probably, right? And then what we'll do is we'll set some benchmarks for them. We'll say, all right, 10 people click the link, but 2 people reported it. We want 10 people reporting. And then we're going to start, raising or moving the goalpost, basically get them, at least get them to 16%, which is the average, like the bottom of the average. Password managers in 2FA, we've been kind of beating that dead horse for the last 20 years. If you're not doing it, do it. AV to EDR. So antivirus to endpoint detect and respond. If you don't know what EDR is, it's fancy antivirus. And it used to be enterprise expensive, and now it is small business inexpensive. It's really not that much more to go from traditional AV to EDR. So we've been moving all of our clients to that. And then SIEMs, security information event management. Basically, it's a log aggregate, and you can set thresholds on things. And it'll trigger alerts based on that. So in the past, you'd need a team and you'd have to do a bunch of configuration. There are actually some products that work well out of the box. Basically, you just install it and there's a default rule set in there that works really well. Some of the stuff that you saw me doing earlier, like adding into the domain admins group, that's going to throw up an alert. That's going to get me busted. Spraying, that could get me busted. So that's another thing. It's not super expensive. I don't want to name drop products. If you want some recommendations, just grab me offline. And with that, I'm going to say thank you and open it up for questions.